This is the Human Operating System Lab, where we learn how humans work, so we can build better lives, make better decisions, and help the people around us do the same. This is Emotion Lesson 3. What emotion is telling you. Emotion gets your attention. Something changes. Your body shifts. Your attention narrows or expands. A thought becomes more important. An impulse appears. You feel drawn towards something or pulled away from it. Whatever has happened, your system has decided that something matters. That is one of the fundamental functions of emotion. Emotion makes information difficult to ignore. But there is an important distinction. The emotion is information. It is not necessarily the conclusion. Part 1. The signal. Fear can tell you that something may require protection. Anger can tell you that something may require confrontation or correction. Sadness can tell you that something valued may have been lost. Joy can tell you that something may be worth approaching, continuing, or remembering. But these are not precise translations. They are signals, and signals require interpretation. Fear does not simply mean that here is danger. It may mean that I perceive danger. Those are very different statements. Anger does not necessarily mean that someone has wronged me. It may mean that something has happened that conflicts with what I expected, wanted, valued, or believed should occur. Sadness does not always mean that something tangible has disappeared. We can grieve a person, but we can also grieve an opportunity, a relationship, an expectation, an identity, or a future we imagined would exist. Emotion tells us that something has become significant, but significance and explanation are not the same thing. To understand what the signal may be telling us, we have to look more closely. Part 2. Signal is not conclusion. Imagine a smoke detector. Its job is not to determine exactly what is happening inside the house. Its job is to detect conditions associated with danger and sound an alarm. Sometimes the alarm means there is a fire. Sometimes someone burned the toast. The alarm is real in both cases. Something triggered it. But the alarm alone cannot tell you which situation you are facing. That does not make the alarm unreliable. It means we must understand what the alarm can and cannot tell us. Emotion works in a similar way. If you feel afraid, the fear is real, but the presence of fear does not prove the presence of danger. If you feel angry, the anger is real, but the presence of anger does not prove that another person intended to harm you. If you feel rejected, the experience of rejection is real, but the feeling itself cannot tell you what another person intended. This distinction is essential, because human beings can move remarkably quickly from feeling to explanation. I feel anxious, therefore something must be wrong. I feel angry, therefore someone must be at fault. I feel embarrassed, therefore everyone must be judging me. Sometimes those explanations are accurate. Sometimes they are not. The important point is that the emotion and the explanation are two different things. One is the signal. The other is our interpretation of the signal. The signal deserves attention. The conclusion deserves examination. Part 3. What emotion reveals. Once we make that distinction, emotion becomes extraordinarily useful. Because emotion can reveal something about what we value, what we fear, what we expect, what we believe, what we remember, what we perceive as threatening, what we perceive as rewarding, and what we believe is happening around us. This is why two people can encounter nearly the same event and respond very differently. Imagine receiving criticism. One person becomes angry. Another becomes embarrassed. Another becomes curious. Another barely reacts at all. The event may be similar. The emotional response is not. That difference contains information, not necessarily about who is right, not necessarily about who understands the situation most accurately, but about the systems doing the interpreting. The angry person may perceive disrespect. The embarrassed person may perceive social failure. The curious person may perceive useful information. The person who barely reacts may perceive little significance at all. The event is part of the equation. But so is the observer. Emotion is therefore not only information about what is happening around us. It can also be information about the person experiencing it. And sometimes it reveals something ordinary thought has not. We may say something does not matter, and discover that it does. We may believe we have moved beyond an experience, and discover that some part of it still carries weight. We may think we want something, and discover hesitation when it becomes possible. We may believe ourselves indifferent and discover anger. We may expect disappointment and discover relief. Emotion does not necessarily explain these contradictions, but it can reveal them, and what is revealed can be observed. Part 4. The grip. What we feel is only one part of the information. There is another question worth asking. How strongly does this emotion hold our attention? Imagine 2 moments of irritation. In the first, something happens. You become irritated. 30 seconds later, the situation has passed. Soon, so has the emotion. Now imagine another irritation. The event itself lasts 30 seconds, but the emotion does not. You replay the conversation. You imagine what you should have said. You return to it while driving, again while eating, again before sleep. The original event has ended, but inside the system something remains active. The emotion has a grip, and that grip is information. We can observe the intensity of an emotion. How strongly do I feel it? We can observe its duration. How long does it remain? We can observe its recurrence. Why does it keep returning? And we can observe its ability to capture attention. How difficult is it to disengage from? Intensity, duration, recurrence, attention. These do not tell us exactly what an emotion means, but they tell us something about its weight within the system. A seemingly small event producing a large emotional response does not automatically mean the response is irrational. It may mean the event touched something larger, a memory, a fear, an expectation, a vulnerability, something valued, something unresolved. We do not need to immediately know which. In fact, deciding too quickly may simply replace one assumption with another. Observation comes before explanation. Sometimes the first useful discovery is simply, this has a stronger grip on me than I expected. That is information. Part 5. Curiosity before obedience. When emotion becomes powerful, we often behave as though there are only 2 choices: suppress it or follow it. But there is another possibility. We can become curious about it. Why this emotion? Why now? What changed? What am I perceiving? What am I protecting? What expectation was violated? What does this situation seem to mean to me? These questions are not an interrogation. Emotion does not need to justify its existence, and they do not guarantee an answer. Human emotion is too complex for every feeling to be neatly explained. Sometimes the source becomes obvious. Sometimes it does not. Sometimes several causes may be operating at once. The purpose is not to produce a perfect explanation. The purpose is to create enough space to observe the signal before turning it into a conclusion or an action. Instead of, I feel this, therefore this must be true, We can begin with something simpler. I feel this. Something in my system is responding. What might it be responding to? That small shift creates a very different relationship with emotion. We are neither dismissing the feeling nor surrendering to it. We are listening. The information remains available, but the story attached to the emotion can now be examined, and the action that follows can remain a choice. Part 6. The Observer. This brings us back to the central purpose of this series. Emotion does not need to be silenced before it can be understood, nor does it need to be obeyed simply because it is powerful. It can be observed. A feeling can be real without its explanation being correct. A signal can deserve attention without becoming an instruction. And sometimes the most useful question is not, how do I stop feeling this? But, what is this feeling showing me? Perhaps something about the situation. Perhaps something about your history, your expectations, your fears, your values, or simply the current condition of the system itself. You do not have to know immediately. You can observe, you can remain curious, you can gather more information, and sometimes not knowing yet is the most accurate answer available. This is not a course about becoming less emotional. It is a course about becoming a better observer and steward of emotion. Stewardship does not mean ignoring the signal. And it does not mean obeying it. It means learning to listen without immediately surrendering the decision. The signal is real. The story is a hypothesis. Emotion informs the decision. It does not have to make it. This is the Human Operating System Lab,